Well, hello everyone. Welcome to BUSA 608 On Demand. And at your request, we've got Dr. Terry Power here today. Thank you for joining us, Terry.
My pleasure, Sandy. Nice to see the folks again. I really missed and enjoyed our brief time together.
Yes. So they're back again, and this time they're doing a change management class.
Pity.
But you can bring a little bit of strategy into it, Terry. How does that sound?
Good. Makes me happy.
Terry, what do you see changes coming down the pipe that might impact us in business?
Well, let me just ramble for a minute, Sandy.
Sure.
Hop in if you like.
Okay.
And but there are a couple things maybe I'd share with the folks today if I could. Firstly, of course, and you'll be familiar with the quote that if you don't like change, you're going to like irrelevance even more. And so that's the message, folks. Whether you like it or not, it's here, and it's happening exponentially. And in fact, in one of my books, I call it the quickening, that it's going so fast. And we'll talk a bit more about that in a few minutes. But I guess I'd talk briefly, if I can, about maybe three changes that are going to impact your lives. The first one, we have to understand that most of society is shaped by water and it's shaped by energy. And that's what's going to drive the economies and drive who has and who hasn't over the next period. So you folks as strategists, as change management experts, those are the fields, the areas that you should be looking at as we move forward. I think the second point I'd make is with respect to my life and banging on 75, I've come to notice that there's a rhythm to things, whether it's the waves on the ocean, etc. And particularly there are three waves that are converging right now in this turbulent time that we're in. And they're on climate, they're on economics, and they're on conflict. And in each of those three, they've happened before sort of individually over the time, but for the first time in a long while, it's happened before, but for the first time in a long while, this rhythm is hitting all at the same time. We're in a very dangerous period in all of those areas. Say climate change, we're within 1 point of a percentage rise on heat, temperature, that will really transform this Earth if we don't do something about it. And indeed, Sandy, as you know, as we're speaking today, there's a climate change with the G20 going on in Brussels, of all places, taking place, I think, today. On the economy, you folks out there know well from our class the economic situation that considers that China's in the Middle East right now is showing signs as fissures of cracks. We think of them as a lot of oil, but Dubai and others are selling off assets. Global Foundries, one of the second largest chip manufacturers in the world, is owned by a sovereign wealth fund in Saudi Arabia, and it's a moneymaker, but they're putting it up for sale because they need the money back in the kingdom. And you folks from Saudi would appreciate those comments. And so that and conflict, of course, I don't need to tell you, the Middle East is just ablaze, and we can discuss who did what to whom. And you know my feelings on this, in large part it was driven by the Americans on opening up Pandora's box, going from Tunisia into Egypt, into Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria. It just hasn't stopped. And once the genie's out of the box, you can't get it back in. And those are the consequences that we're living with now. So those are two major changes, and then you could write a whole book on any one of those that are going to impact your life and how you do business and how you craft your strategies. But the thing I want to take a moment about today, if I can, is the Internet of Things. We've talked a bit about that, but that's that connectiveness that's going to take place between everything, between humans, between animals, between machinery. It's all going to be connected. And we call it, when it first starts out, the Internet of Things, but for me it's morphing over to the Internet of Everything. And that's the world that we're going to find ourselves in. And part of this story is it's going to drive a complete change, it seems to me, in our economic system. Currently, up to this point, you've been taught the old industrial age models, and you'll know this from some of your courses, that you take your fixed and variable costs, come down that supply curve until that particular point you break even. And at the break-even point, the curve starts to turn up, and you should stop production at that point because now you're losing money. But in the Internet of Everything, that changes. We now have what is close to a zero-based marginal economy. This newspaper that Sandy and I were reading and talking about a few minutes ago, as you know from your classes, the sense that the Globe and Mail, when they produced this paper in the old model, would produce so far down as they came to that break-even last piece of copy that came off the press, and at that point they stopped printing. But now that they're going online, they're coming on to 7.5 billion people in the world. They can read this almost for free. So that's when I say the zero marginal economy, the cost of everything, of food, of electricity, etc., will all be coming down as a result of this new Internet of Everything.
Education MOOCs.
Education,
Yeah.
MOOCs, education, yeah. And in fact, we talk about the roles of schools. No longer is it productive to have this class in a classroom, bricks and mortars any longer, it seems to me, of 35 people with all the attendant costs. It doesn't make sense. You can have a class like this, and Sandy today could be delivering this course to 10,000 people with a properly designed online course, and the role of the university becomes that of a browser. That simply, if somebody like you comes in and wants a course, why wouldn't you take a course like this from somebody like a Porter at Harvard or another individual, say from Wharton, and take this course, and we can direct you as a browser to the best online modules in the world. And
But then they wouldn't get to see you, Terry.
You say the best things. We're having lamb together, by the way, and dinner on Friday night. But my point is, and I won't spend a lot of time on this, but there is transformational changes taking place within the industry. But with those changes, if one person can truly deliver these MOOCs that are being delivered now, you can go now and get a free strategy course from Wharton, no charge, online, available to you. If that is truly happening, we don't need all the instructors, all the professors we have. We don't need all the buildings we have. We need to change our business models. And that's happening in every industry you name. Pick another one.
Fly fishing.
Fly fishing. Well, certainly the idea of salmon farming and those things popped to my mind.
Yeah.
And if we took just the farms and the prairies, those things, right now they have the robots are driving these machines. They're coming online. Suncor Industries have just ordered 65 robotic trucks, big giant trucks. You remember the ones you stand by the wheel and how big they are? Well, they've got those coming down the pipe and being delivered in the next 18 months to them, Suncor Industries. That wasn't even on the roadmap. I talked to one of my colleagues at another oil industry company, and they weren't even aware that Suncor had done that. But can you imagine the advantage they're going to have this large trucks, 65 of them, moving the dirt and soil and goods back and forth with robotic controls. They don't need drivers. They operate in the black 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, no union problems. Imagine the costs that are coming down. And just translate that in if you're in the trucking industry in this country, that if trucks can truly do that, we have black plants now. We don't need lights on. We don't need heat on. We have robots building widgets in the store, robots packing them, robots putting them on the back of containers, robot trucks driving them down to the port in Vancouver, offloading them, putting them on drone ships, taking them across, offloading them on the site. If all that is true, and I tell you that it is, what's that do to the trucking industry? 250,000 truckers in this country. So I'm not saying far out. I'm saying 5-10 years out it's happening. You folks there know Google and what's happening to the Google cars. They're actually trying. In fact, one got a ticket the other day for going too slow on the highway. And so it's happening as we speak. Medicine, 3D printing, cars. I only use my card 4% of the time. Probably even a little less, 4%. The other 96% of the time it sits rusting up in front of my place. And imagine for a minute the idea of a 3D printing a plastic pod that is a electric car that I can use. And imagine further, like Uber, that it's not even owned by me. I just order down my electric, I call it snitchmobile or office mobile or something. It's not going to be a car anymore. It's my mobile office. Is going to come on demand, and I'm going to hop into this thing and carry on working, and it's going to drop me off wherever I want to go. And that's right on top of us as we speak today, and check Google on that. And it's not a quantum leap, but the drones we have today that are delivering Amazon stuff, to imagine 4 propellers on the side of these things on aluminum shells and plastic covers, are going to move us, which solves some of the transportation issues. And the same is for medicine, and you pick the field, that's what's happening.
In retail, we've got Black Thursday. Black Friday coming up?
And that's a big issue, issue. Malls are under attack right now because Amazon and the rest are doing it. And the only way those folks are going to survive is they've got to build an experience in the mall. The stores, there's got to be that niche boutique. Just the run-of-the-mill regular hardware store, et cetera, won't work anymore because people can just order it in cheaper and the convenience of having it brought to the home. So it's a transformational shift in the business models of shopping malls, and that impacts on our investments and all those pension funds and things that use this. I mean, I'm excited about this, but I can tell you that it's completely transformational. It's not the old way of doing it. It's this new hybrid economy that we're about to go into. It's a new industrial age we're going into, and it's that severe that it will be disruptive to every industry. And if anybody out there wants to pick an industry and send me an email, I'll be glad to explain to them in a nutshell. I've got a book coming out on it early in the new year, and I go into quite a number of industries at some depth as to what's coming down the pipe for them. And then that leads to the next part of that is great, that's wonderful. I call it, the internet of everything and through the looking glass, because once we step in here, we can't get back. And so what we're going to see happening here is because of 50 million sensors and everything we do, our facial recognition is all going to be put in these databases, whether you like it or not, we're being recorded. Every card you have, every chip, every time you do a monitor, you're being recorded. It's going to this database. The problem for us becomes data security and data sovereignty. Can our data go to Americans, and can it go to the Middle East, or go to China, or can our and what control do we have over that privacy? And that's all breaking down. I think if you didn't have it, I'll be glad to put the link up for you. As we speak, there's a real-time attack for the internet cyber warfare going place. We talk about the 6 domains of warfare, and cyber warfare, we're under attack. It's going on hourly. Our systems are being tested and prodded as we're prodding them on each side of this. I read one the other day, to just digress for a moment. The Russians are developing their new submarine, which is a drone submarine. And it can lie dormant for a year or two out in the bottom of the floor.
Yeah.
Can you imagine that with nuclear weapons out just sitting off New York Harbor till they want it 2 years from now? I don't know how to protect from it because it's just an instant and it'll be there. This is all happening and it's going so fast that we have to get our head around it. So we have that question back to what I was saying, that the idea of data security and data sovereignty are 2 issues. And then arising out of that is the pest analysis that you normally do, that politically that's going to change because we have this gap between the rich and the poor now, and it's getting wider. And if we start doing what I think is going to happen in the Internet of Things, we're going to start laying off those that aren't educated and skilled in the center. It's going to get worse. More people down here. Maybe a guaranteed annual income is required, but we're going to have this widening gap. And as we saw through Tunisia and the Middle East, if 15 to 25-year-olds see no hope, no jobs, and they're being laid off as these things downsize, politically it can cause a lot of instability. So we need to address and think about that. Economic situation, the Internet of Things will add about $1.9 trillion to the Canadian economy by 2020. That's a big jump in our growth and our productivity. But that's done by machines, not by people. But nevertheless, the economy will shift. But again, who has the money, who has the money, who doesn't have the money is going to be widely spread. And then if you take the societal side of the house, the aspect, today in the paper we're reading about people in camps living in parks around Victoria, that where are you going to put them up because people are homeless and going on. And so all this is coming to bear as we go through it. I've rambled for a minute, but
another societal factor would be resistance to change.
Resistance to change. People aren't going to want to do that. I mean, your unions will be the biggest player in this.
Right.
Unions will fight every drop of the way. The minute you want to lay off a worker in a hospital, because a drone can do this right now. I mean, the other day there was a new breakthrough by the University of Victoria that's tied into the Mayo Clinic. The Mayo Clinic have already accepted it. It's just waiting to get clearance here in Canada. We're lagging a bit. But one little pinprick of your blood now can do 25 tests. And that can go on to the Apple sort of bracelets. And it can go directly to your doctors. Well, that knocks out all those clinics. You go get your blood work and take 3 vials from you for a little bit of blood. That all changes. You can do it now hourly with your little machine and your little wristwatch that you wear. And that all goes into the best doctors in the world. It doesn't have to be the doctor in Langford. It could go to the Mayo Clinic for analysis. And that's happened that fast. So our health care will go up, but the number of workers will go down. But you're right. All those unions, all those 250,000 truck drivers are going to be contesting and standing and picketing. So you're right. A lot of resistance to change.
How do people deal with that?
With change?
With resisting the. How do people deal with the resisting to change?
Well, it's unfortunate to say this, but my sense is, having viewed it over the world, governments move by those folks who lobby and pay and make it happen. It won't happen. Nobody really speaks for you and I, for us. And that's sort of a jaded view, but the reality is that it's the ones with the economic clout. It's the puppet masters behind the scenes. The folks that make the large contributions. It's the unions that make the large contributions. The pension funds make the large contributions. The teachers' union, large contributions. Those folks will have some clout. They'll have some say at the table. How you and I make some change in this, I really don't know, Sandy. It's going to be extremely difficult.
Yeah. What do you think education is going to look like 10 years from now? Do you think the MOOCs will take hold?
MOOCs will be part of the solution. I think that has to happen. We cannot afford. I mean, you can't afford the student loans you now have to take these courses. It's just getting crazy. And there's no. If we keep on this model, it's going up. In fact, let me just break off and ramble back
Sure.
there for a minute if I can. That's our problem today, is that we're still locked into the old model. Remember oil at $120 a barrel, saying those were the good times for the oil sands and those sort of things. But those days aren't coming back. Those days in Alberta are not coming back. It's over. The demographics in Canada, they're all senior old farts like me. That's the size of it. And we're not going back to 3-bedroom homes with 4-car garages. It's over. And we got to get that in our mind, that we can't look back and say, how do we fix the problem there and get it back on harness? Can't be done. You got to accept reality for what it is today and what it's going to be tomorrow. And for me, that changes the new mental models, the new business models on how we're going to move forward on this. I hope I answered your question or rambled.
You did, actually. No, we instead of holding on to what was and trying to get back to what was, think
Can't
about
do it.
what is right for the future.
No.
And change accordingly.
You can't do it. And you see companies trying to do that. You see Intel is a good example of that. Intel are fighting desperately. They're the ones that promoted Moore's Law, that idea every 18 months that the speed doubles. Moore's Law is collapsing around their ears. Billion-dollar company, lots of money, lots of engineers, haven't figured it out yet. They're still trying to find, on a silicon chip, the ways to keep Moore's Law going that'll double every 18. Can't happen. You can't push it any harder. The silicon is dead. It's breaking down. There's no more capacity in it. So you got to find new things like gallium, which is now new startups are starting to use for chips, which are 10 times faster, 10 times cheaper, and 10 times less heat. Poet Technologies is one of those. That sort of situation, the old companies that can't get it yet, they're dead. And you're either quick or the dead in this business. If you don't like the change, you're irrelevant. There's no choice. And the same for you as individuals. If you can't retool, and you're one of those folks in the middle class, and you've got medieval history is what you've been studying, and there's no jobs for medieval history or truck drivers, you have to retool. Whether you're 40 years old, 20 years old, or 60 years old, if you don't retool, you're on the garbage heap. And then becomes the problem for government. Like the Romans collapsed 472 AD.
Yeah.
How do we feed these people? Well, circuses and bread. So we need to find some circuses and bread to keep these people happy, or you'll have the situation in Egypt of the Arab Springs taking over, where people just won't put up with it.
Yeah, we're in the middle of a 2-week session right now on resistance to change. So resistance is futile.
Nothing brings about change quicker than a crisis. You've got to have a crisis, whether it's perceived or actual. Whether you create a crisis, but if you don't have a crisis, people relax, lay back, and just do things the old way. But in any organization, you want to motivate them, then you've got to have that sort of sense of crisis.
It's Cotter's sense of urgency.
To get them moving. Yeah. That's where I find myself in it.
Well, thank you very much, Terry. It's been a pleasure talking to you. I think we'll have to change trade papers.
Oh, okay. And I'll say one final thing.
Sure.
The key phrases for your people today and all organizations when you go back to your firms, 2 things: entrepreneurship and innovation. You must have those. Without those, your organizations are dead. Sandy, thanks very much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Terry.
Good, dear.
Pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.